And welcome back to The Breakfast Show. It is Breakfast with Sunrise.
That's right. Okay, now just before the break then, you saw a report there brought to you by Sabrina Radmore with updates on the Tamil protests and what's happening there, and of course the movements of the UK government and others as well. Now, joining us this morning then to discuss that report and of course the latest situation in detail, we have Douglas Wickramaratne, who is the president of the Sinhala Association, and we also have humanitarian worker Arjunan Veerasingham. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Right, okay, now, Douglas, you're speaking on behalf of the Sinhalese people, and Arjunan, yourself on behalf of the Tamil people. Right, okay, just going by, first of all, the report that we saw just before the break, and of course a latest press statement by the British Tamils Forum as well. Just one of the quotes they have there: Sri Lanka's so-called no-fire zone is now one of the most dangerous places in the world. That's what the Asia Director, Human Rights Watch, has said. First of all, Arjunan, just coming to you, it's gone so far down the line. We have a handful of people, the Tamil civilians there, still suffering. Quite a bit of a bloodbath, and yet I know that, of course, you know, there are, obviously in that report it says we fear a bloodbath, but isn't that already maybe a little bit too late? Do you think it's not maybe time for the Tamil people to sort of maybe, or even the Tamil Tigers, to just admit defeat and maybe hold back and say that enough's enough?
Well, the LTT, the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, have for the last month or so or more been calling for a ceasefire. But the current situation is not just a handful, it's about 180 to 200,000 people.
Considering how many have already died.
Yeah, about 140 per day over the last 3 months, about 5,000 since the beginning of the month, and about 10,000 injured. So the severe casualties occurring in a safe zone that the government of Sri Lanka has designated, but continues to fire mortars, bombing, shelling into this area. Why designate a safe zone and have people go there if you're going to shell it? I mean, it is it's a slaughter that's taking place.
Sure. Okay, but what about what the United Nations are saying? Individuals are being held as human shields. You know, how can you even fathom that? You know,
if that was the case, it would be horrible. But what we say is there's no way to find out what is going on there, because there's no international media, there's no international agencies there. Since September of 2008, the government of Sri Lanka has prevented the international organizations, the United Nations. Since January of 2007, the media has not been allowed into the area. So what we say is a ceasefire, allow the people, the international monitors, to go in and find out what's going on there.
Right. Okay, yesterday there was actually a report that was, I mean, I watched it on one of the media channels where a press camera was in there, and yesterday they had a bit of an incident where these individuals, there was actually tens of thousands of people actually ran. You could see them running. After 3 or 4 hours, they were still running to get to the other side, to get away from, you know, this safe zone. And we've seen, you know, there are tents, there are provisions there, but yet we're still, I mean, the United Nations have actually claimed that the Tamil Tigers are terrorists. Now, that's not just the United Nations. Lots and lots of countries all over the world have actually claimed that as well. But the thing that I don't really understand, what is it that you're fighting for? Well, what is this protest really? What is it that you're fighting for? And what type of awareness?
Well, there's many things you just raised there, so I'll address each of them, hopefully if I can remember them all. Better to solve small packets and we can address each one individually. Firstly, it is a safe zone, so we would imagine that the government of Sri Lanka and the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam would respect the safe zone. But the government has been preventing humanitarian aid in adequate quantities to go to these areas for the last 18 months or so. So that's against international humanitarian law and amounts to war crimes and genocide. There is no international organizations there, as I said, except the ICRC visits and evacuates people. So with all these things going on, how can you say that what's going on there? Nobody has any idea what's going on. So we say ceasefire, international monitors. But your other point was the...
The protest
by the people here. Ceasefire. All they're asking for is a ceasefire.
Okay, can we just bring Douglas in here? Ceasefire, okay, LTTE is asking for ceasefire time and time again, but Sri Lanka is obviously concerned that does ceasefire actually mean ceasefire?
Actually, what has happened is we have had ceasefires right the
Does
way
it mean
through
that that's going to be the end of it then? And you know,
yeah,
we
1985 we have had talks with them every time the LTT, the Tamil Tigers, have walked out. And we all know that Tamil Tigers are the most ruthless terrorist organization in the world. And they have an appalling record of dealing with civilians.
Yeah. Sure.
They have expelled civilians from the north. You know that ethnic cleansing was introduced to that part of the world by the Tamil Tigers. They cleared out all the Sinhalese from the Jaffna area. Then they threw out 100,000 Muslims who were given only 24 hours notice to clear out of Jaffna, and they were allowed only to carry each family only £5, 500 rupees worth. That was all. And those people are languishing in civilian camps still. Now, these people who are talking about concern for civilians, have they ever shown any concern for those people who have been driven out by the Tamil Tigers? No, they have never protested. These people are now protesting here. When they mean by ceasefire is they're trying a last-ditch attempt to save the Tamil Tigers. Now, if they were concerned about civilians, the story that they spread out, oh, these civilians are being massacred. The government, the army, has been an example to the world how they dealt with the civilians. They have, now you could see how the civilians are attempting to escape. And those civilians are being fired at by the LTTE.
Okay, Arjun, and you obviously don't agree with that.
No, we've seen the reports.
Right.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has stated that a month and a half ago that 2,800, and since there more have died. So it's the international agencies are saying that shelling, attacks on hospitals, Human Rights Watch and the United Nations have said that there were over 20 attacks on hospitals. The Defense Secretary, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, stated, please let me finish, I didn't interrupt you.
Okay.
He has stated that anything outside the safe zone is a legitimate target. Well, in international human rights law and the Geneva Convention prevent any attack on a hospital. So I don't know what he's talking about, but going back to the Muslim, the Jaffna has been in the government of Sri Lanka's control since 1995. Why haven't the Muslims and the Sinhalese gone back there? Because the government of Sri Lanka has no want for them to go back to those areas. They have prevented them from going back. The LTTE, during the ceasefire time, said that they welcome the Muslims to return to those areas and were encouraging them to do so.
Okay, Arjuna, the latest update that we've just received yesterday, the government, Sri Lankan government, said that the militants, they must put down their weapons within 24 hours, and then they will proceed with the ceasefire. Do you think that's going to happen?
I don't think that is going to happen from the LTTE's perspective. I don't know. I can't speak for the LTTE. I'm not a member of the LTTE. I'm just a humanitarian worker.
Okay.
But I would hope that both sides would declare a ceasefire.
Why do you think that's not going to happen if they're, you know, they're calling for ceasefire time and time again?
Because the human rights record of the government of Sri Lanka is one of the worst in the world. Over the last 3 years, over 5,000 people have disappeared from white van abductions. All the human rights monitoring mechanisms of the United Nations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International have condemned all of their abuses. Currently, the people that came out that you saw in those pictures are going to be put in concentration camps, declared so by the Human Rights Watch, Amnesty, etc. And the United Nations itself has raised concerns. So these people are in barbed wire camps, not allowed to go out. Their family members can't come in. I have relatives in those camps, and we can't have any contact with them. We can't pass messages. I have relatives in the rest of the country. I would like them to be able to go and live in my relative's house in Jaffna, rather than in this concentration camp, where the government has planned to keep them for 3 years. After international pressure, has said, okay, only 1 year.
But in defense, the government is saying that that's purely for security reasons.
Whose security?